Hi everybody, we're going to look at the differences between synthetic and natural materials and just kind of look at the materials around us and figure out what they're made of. This is going to be helpful to you when you're thinking about your trash to treasures project for art and science. So as we saw in our Mystery Monday, all the materials around us are made of atoms. So that includes living things and also non-living things. So those things can be made of, trillions and trillions and trillions of atoms because atoms are so crazy small. Yes, it's true. Atoms make up everything. So the cool part is that atoms can combine to form molecules of various shapes, sizes, and properties. So we can have little tiny molecules of things like water, or larger molecules of things like glucose, which is sugar, or big gigantic molecules of like fat or cellulose, like in trees. So atoms can combine in many different ways with each other, and those make up the really cool materials around us. So when atoms and molecules combine, we call that a chemical reaction. And those atoms and molecules, they usually rearrange themselves and they produce new things. So we're going to talk just a little bit about chemical reactions today, not too much, but just understand the basic ideas that those atoms or those materials are ingredients. And those ingredients go into a chemical reaction and they form some kind of product. No, we're not going to talk about chocolate cake today, some other types of things. But just the general idea is that you have your ingredient atoms and molecules, and they do a chemical reaction to produce new things. Now, the ingredients we're going to be talking about instead of flour and sugar and eggs are our natural resources. You guys looked at natural resources last week, so you know that natural resources can be put into the categories of either being renewable resources or non-renewable, limited resources. Now, all of these things are materials that humans use to survive or for societies to function. So when we think about societies functioning, we think about transportation and electricity. So all these things around us are considered our natural resources and can be ingredients to make other materials. So when we think about materials, we usually put them into two categories, synthetic or natural. Now, it doesn't matter which of these you're talking about because all of these are made of natural resources. So like wool or cotton or wood fiber, or if you're talking about fossil fuels to make plastics and rubber. So here are the big differences between these two. Synthetic materials are made by humans using natural resources such as fossil fuels, minerals, or trees. So they could be renewable or non-renewable. Usually chemical reactions need to happen to create these new materials using the natural resources as a building block. So those natural resources are the ingredients and a chemical reaction takes place. So synthetic materials are made by humans and they're run in a chemical reaction to produce something new and interesting. So for example, polyester fabric, that kind of stretchy fabric, is made from fossil fuels that have been chemically changed into plastic fibers and woven into cloth. By comparison, natural materials are made by nature, and there's not that extra step of humans doing chemical reactions. Typically, we're talking about things that involve plants and animals. These materials can be changed, but are not produced using chemical reactions to change the actual molecules. So for example, wool from sheep is turned into yarn. It can be dyed red and woven into a cloth, which are all changes, but it's still wool. It's still that original type of material that was produced by a sheep. So basically, big idea is they're both types of materials that we use. It's just important to understand where these materials, ingredients are coming from. So big idea is synthetic materials are materials that do not exist in nature on their own. Why is that important? Well, we want kids to grow up knowing that, rubber bands don't just grow in nature, nor do basketballs. These things have to actually be produced and made using natural resources. And that these synthetic materials definitely don't look like nature, but they do come from things found in nature. And once again, we need to protect things in nature so we have these resources. Some other examples of synthetic materials are plastics, medicines, and fuels. So scientists may synthesize or make a compound that can also be found in nature. So we're going to talk about a few examples here. You can also watch a video with Professor Dave about synthetic vitamins, and he explains the difference between natural and synthetic molecules pretty well. I'm going to give you some of my examples. So vanilla flavor. So if we talked about natural vanilla, that would be vanilla extracted from a vanilla bean, a type of orchid that grows in tropical areas. But we can also make a vanilla flavor, a vanilla molecule, in basically a set of chemical reactions. The benefit to that is that it's cheaper, so you can get cheaper flavored vanilla material so that you don't have to pay as much for your ice cream. The drawback is that, yeah, this is made from a chemical reaction and it's not the same as the original material. However, the molecule is the same, so it's going to smell the same and it's pretty much going to taste the same. Another example is vitamin C. And notice I'm starting to use some chemical formulas in here. I got a molecule model. So in that molecule model, you have C6H8O6. So that means you have 6 carbon atoms, which are the gray, dark gray, H8, which are the white circles there. Some are kind of hidden. And then O6 are the red oxygen atoms. So that's the vitamin C molecule. So you could be talking about vitamin C in oranges or lemons or grapefruits, or you could be talking about like the store-bought vitamins. And it's the same molecule, just one is made by nature and one is not. So big idea is that it's going to help boost your immune system and do all these great things in your body. It's just one is made through chemical reactions that involve natural resources, and then the other one is obviously natural resource because plants are natural resources, even those that produce oranges. Another example, this is kind of fancy, but another example is there's a lot of molecules around us that are used in really kind of cutting edge cancer treatments and viral treatments. And a lot of those molecules are coming from living things, even really weird living things, like algae and stuff like that in the ocean and seaweeds. Plastics are another example of a synthetic material. So in this case, plastics, of course, are made from fossil fuels. So in the US, they're typically made from natural gas or methane or oil. There's chemical reactions that take place, and they make this really long, lightweight polymer molecule. Now, plastic is really handy because it's lightweight, it's cheap, it can be used for lots and lots of different things. However, as we've found out, the plastics don't biodegrade. Same thing would happen with bioplastic. So the bioplastic that we made the other day, that's a synthetic material. We took cornstarch, which was made by nature, and then we did some chemical reactions by heating it in the microwave, and we turned it into bioplastic. So that's an example of something that was not found in nature, and we were able to produce it. So big ideas, positives and negatives of synthetic materials. Sometimes we say the word synthetic and we get all freaked out that we're all going to be exposed to a bunch of chemicals and die. That may or may not be true, but the bigger idea is that we chemically produce lots of materials. So all of our medicines, our vaccines, and vitamins, all of those are produced from chemical reactions. That can be helpful to kind of isolate those materials and get those out to the masses to help improve overall human health. Synthetic materials are really inexpensive. They're versatile, meaning that you can make lots and lots of different things with them. You can produce new novel materials. They're often lightweight, which is good for transportation, and they can be very convenient. So all those are positives of this whole process of humans doing chemical reactions to produce stuff. The drawback is that it's using natural resources, but it's harder for us humans to tell that that's happening. So it's obvious when you use paper that it comes from trees, but it's harder to tell with a synthetic material where that material is coming from. And so sometimes that means we don't preserve natural resources because we don't understand how widely we use them. Also, the manufacture of synthetic materials uses a lot of energy and often involves a lot of pollution too. The byproducts or the other things made in the process of these chemical reactions can often be harmful to human health and the environment. So in particular, we're thinking about pollutants in the air or industrial waste that's put into water. So all those things would be drawbacks of using synthetic materials. So here are some practice questions. You can look at this list of materials and see if you can figure out which of these would be natural or synthetic. I'll give you a moment. Check it out. All right, did you figure it out? Let's look at them together. So chicken eggs, yes, that's a natural material. Coal is also a natural material. It was just produced millions of years ago. Plastic is synthetic. We have to do a chemical reaction to produce it. Aluminum is a natural material because it is formed in Earth's crust, and then we usually isolate it. Brass is another metal, but in this case, brass is not found in this form in nature. Brass is used for our instruments and stuff like that. It requires some chemical action to produce it. Sunlight is a natural material. That's self-explanatory. I think ice cream is a synthetic material. Ice cream is not found in nature. This involves chemical reactions and mixing things together. Humans are involved here. Vaccines are also a synthetic material. So hopefully you get kind of the general idea of putting these into categories because it helps us think more deeply about the materials they come from. And then hopefully you'll be able to answer these last two questions. So give an example of a synthetic material and a natural material, and then identify two key differences between these types of materials. Hopefully after watching, you'll be able to figure that out.